Hi everyone, my name is Darkro. I'm a Sonic Adventure 2 battle speedrunner, and today we're going to have talk about a little something in Death Chamber called Death Strats. Now I'm going to put a little disclaimer out there. There's been some information determined recently that has made Death Strats require some revision to be optimal. So what I'm going to tell you is old knowledge. It's going to change in the coming months, but for now it's pretty good. And I'm hoping it'll dispel some of the rumors surrounding Death Strats have been around for a little bit too long. So just be aware that in the coming months this information is going to change, it's going to get modified, it's not going to get worse, but it's only going to get better as we get more information. But in this case, for just pure Death Strats, this information is as accurate as I can get it. It's been timed to a T, so I'm pretty confident in it being accurate for when it was made. Anyway, let's have a chat about Death Chamber and its shape, and how the game assigns pieces. It's pop-in game here. So one of the things people never notice about Death Chamber is that it actually has maps. Boom. It's great. Color-coded and everything. Obviously we're in Red Room, you can see where it's indicating, and you can see Blue Room and Green Room there, and Core. And you can see generally the shape of this map is a triangle, and we're at the tip of it. It's actually in a different orientation in reality, but good enough. So, this actually results in some interesting patterns, and you can use this map against the game with a couple little facts in there. So when you get a first piece, if you know the rules of the piece setting, you can realize some interesting patterns. And one of the main rules is that the game does not want all of the three pieces to be too close to each other, because if you found them all in one room, that wouldn't be very much of a challenge. So, instead, it actually goes through while it's generating the pieces and checks to ensure that those pieces are being generated at a distance from each other. So, it does this in order, too. And anyone who's done M1 ILs or the Knuckles stages will know that you have to get them in reverse order for things to work properly. So when the game is generating pieces, it generates the first one randomly. It does not take any other pieces into account, it just sets it and calls it good. When it gets to the piece 2, it looks at the piece 1 and calculates all the different distances from that first piece 1 that it set to every piece 2 in the stage. And then it takes all those distances, lines them up, and takes the close half and throws them away. So it only chooses from the farthest pieces. Half of them, in fact. So that guarantees that between piece 1 and 2, there's going to be a fair amount of distance, hopefully. The game doesn't actually check the distances under a minimum. That used to be a concept called interference ranges. That is not a thing. The game does not actually set any particular range, it just checks to see which ones are the closest ones, takes the closest half, throws it away, and the remaining ones, the distances are what the distances are. The game does not care. So, that's piece 2. And for piece 3, it does something very similar, where it takes into account piece 1 and piece 2 at the same time, and checks sort of a distance formula called vector cross product to determine how far away the piece 3 is from those two at the same time, and checks all the piece 3 possibilities, throws away the closest half of the piece 3s, and then selects from the remaining far away half. And then now you have your piece combinations. So on the surface you think, oh, that's pretty cool, but it actually becomes helpful, because if you know the distribution of pieces in the shape of the map, you can make some interesting calls about where your other pieces are. For example, for piece 3s, if you know where your piece 1 is, and you know where your piece 2 is, you can say that your piece 3 is probably far away from both of those. So in the case of Death Chamber, if you get a first piece in blue and a second piece in red, your third piece is going to be either in core or green, because it's far away. Now there's some exceptions to that, but broadly that's going to be pretty accurate. So that's helpful. And secondly, you realize that you can tell some ideas about your piece 2 from your piece 1. So if you got a first piece in blue, you would say, okay, my second piece is going to be in red or green, so I should start running away from blue, or vice versa. And whatever permutation of rooms you get your first piece. Now another fact that helps us out is the fact that when you die, the game re-rolls the remaining pieces, but according to the rules of the ones you've already collected. So if you collected piece 1, it'll re-roll piece 2 and piece 3 according to the rules of that piece 1, as if it was already re-rolled as part of that set. So if you get a piece 1 in blue, it's not going to set your next pieces after that death in blue again, because it's saying, okay, your first piece that you collected was in blue, so your first piece is going to be treated as though it was always in blue. And then it rerolls piece 2 and piece 3 according to that. So it won't forget that your first piece was in blue. Now that's interesting too, because if you can engineer a situation in which a piece will probably end up in a helpful location, you can use deaths to keep re-rolling where it is until it is in that location for real. And that is what Death Strats is. We use the fact that we expect a piece to be in a certain area and a number of deaths to get it into that area to where we can quickly grab it and move on with our lives. And that's all it is. So notice that we haven't discussed yet which rooms go where. We'll talk about that in a second, but that is the crux of Death Strats. The fact that we can impose rules on the game by what first piece we collect, and use deaths to keep forcing it to re-roll pieces according to those rules until it gives us one that is helpful. And we're going to do that in both Green Room and Blue Room. A lot of people have heard of the Blue Room Death Strats because they were the first ones that are found, and they have the most obvious effects. But Green Room has its own Death Strats too, and in fact they're actually responsible for a bigger time change than the Blue Room ones, although they're not as impressive because you don't get the swaggy Red Room pieces right off the bat. But we'll talk about them both. So let's just have a look at a real map of the stage. This is one that I made in programs called SolidWorks, which is not at all made for doing this, so it's clunky as heck. So let's look at the second pieces. So these white dots are piece 2s. And you can quite clearly see there's a lot of them in Red Room. There's a bunch in Red-Blue, there's a bunch in Blue Room up here, and there's a bunch in Green Room. It's not color-coded, but it's the same map you were just looking at. Notice the Red-Blue is actually a really long hallway. It's so long it doesn't fit, and they have to float it out in space. And this is critical, because this tells us some interesting things. Number one, there's a lot of piece 2 possibilities in red. There's not very many in green, though. And there's some in blue and some in red-blue, but there's this neat imbalance between red and green, between which one has more pieces, and it's red. So this is what causes both Green Room Death Strats and Blue Room Death Strats to work and be helpful. So if you die with a Blue Room first piece, it's the closest half of the pieces are going to include all these and all these. So your farthest pieces are a couple in core, a couple in green, but a whole bunch in red or close to it. That's pretty good because that's what increases the chance of Red Room pieces after a death to be really good. That's why Blue Room Death Strats can be helpful. And in Green Room, there are not many pieces around here for the game to cancel out because they're too close, so it has to look farther. So you have a bunch of pieces in core that are now within that half of the pieces that are too close, and a bunch of the pieces in red that are in that half that are too close. So Green Room Death Strats, you would expect to see a second piece, not in red, not in core, but in red-blue, and maybe some in blue. So that heavily constrains where your second piece can be from a Green Room first piece. And that's really helpful again. It doesn't seem like it, but it actually works in our favor really well. So, now that we discussed that, let's actually go through what the procedure is for Death Strats. We're going to talk about 3 of them. So let's cut to the game and play around. Let's see what we can get here. That's a Blue Room first piece. Let's go and grab it. You're going to want to take a hit before you do this, so you don't have any rings. I usually take it on that red body, but it's a tutorial. Let's make sure I don't die here. Let's grab our Blue Room piece, and then what we want to do is die as quickly as possible. Do not grab a hint. There's a time when we will be grabbing a hint, but that's after some science is done in a couple months. For now, go straight to the death. It is the fastest way to get what you want. So, at this point you have 2 options. You can grab a hint, or you can just look at the radar. The easiest one is just look at the radar. There's nothing going on. So, all we have to do is die again. Just hold back and glide, and you find the fire. You can just keep repeating this until you get a piece that is helpful to you. It pops up in the radar, and life is good. This is a very easy strategy to remember for new players. So here we go. There's our piece. Boom. Bugs chatting. Let's die some more and see what we can get. Super easy to remember. You just look at it and the answer is done for you. Oh, time to die. If the radar goes off, then you're good. If it doesn't, you just die again until you get it. Unless you're going to game over. Now, as this shows, death strats don't guarantee anything. This is a gamble. The gamble turns out to be between 40 and 45% though, so it's not bad. There we go. So there are times that you can get really lucky and you get it every time. There are times that you won't see it for like 10 attempts. There's another one. Hey, roasted. So this will not guarantee anything, and sometimes you're just going to get unlucky. Wow, speaking of getting lucky. So there's a second opportunity here for players who want to go a little bit further. Just looking at the radar gets you 95% of the time save. But if you want a little bit more, you're going to want to come up here and check this hint. Huge black wall. See, that one's not going to tick the radar, but it's close enough to be worth getting. It's right through that door, you just do a spiral uppercut and you got it. So that's a pretty good piece to get. Even though it's not taking the radar off, an experienced player will look and say, I can get that quickly. And then they just go grab it and they move on with their lives. So that's pretty good. Let's do it again, see what else kicks around. So checking the hint allows you to get pieces that don't move the radar, but are close enough to get. And there's a bunch of these in Red-Green Hallway, like Burning Mad, like White Family. There's a couple in Red-Blue, and there's a couple over in Core. So doing this reduces the amount of times that you'll have to do death strats. And that's helpful because that means you can still get the close pieces that are good. See, this was one you would take even though it doesn't move the radar. And that's why checking the hint is slightly advantageous. It's not night and day difference, but it's some. And if you're an experienced player looking for a little bit more average time save, that's a pretty good way to do it. Again, this one is worth taking even though it doesn't move the radar. So whereas someone just looking at the radar would die again and potentially cost themselves a little bit more time, you will know enough to go and grab it, and you'll be able to get it out there just a little bit faster. Let's poke our noses into green room death strats, because this one is a little bit different. So like I said before, we won't be able to get a red room piece reliably. It will happen sometimes. In fact, for junk storage, the chance is actually around 25%. But for all the other pieces, it's pretty low. It's like between 10 and 20%, which is not very good. So we're going to have to do something a little bit more clever. What we're going to do is we're going to gamble that piece is between red and blue. So immediately from the start, we're going to go to the right. There's a hint right there. There's a bunch of boxes we're going to crash through, and there's either the little gateway to the red-blue hallway, or there's a fire, depending on what we need. So I'm going to go straight to the right over to that hint, and we're going to evaluate what we want to do. Now, I got a red room piece already, so I don't even need to do this. I don't have to go to the right. I can just grab it. Tilted picture. That's pretty cool. That's not going to happen very often. Okay, this is normal. What do we got? Red body. This one is exactly what we expected. It's within this red-blue hallway. You don't have to dig out the painting on the other side. That's too far. In this case, it's in red-blue hallway. We'd go through and you'd hit the switch and stuff, or you could booty clip for this one. In fact, I believe booty clipping for anything farther than fire dance is faster for this particular route, even though it includes turning around and doing all this. I broke it, but I wasn't going to go that far anyway. So red body, good one to take. Scorpions who don't get along, that's in blue core, that's a death. Those are the ones you're going to see most often, and you have to say, okay, I'm going to die to those. The ones in blue core you do not want to take. Fire dance, perfect. That's one you'd want to take, so you go straight through the painting. There's one in red-blue, or just in red. Like I said, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Angry guy, perfect. That one you'll be going through the painting for. Fire dance. Perfect. So you can see, this is pretty effective. If you were getting those pieces normally, and you were in green room, you'd have a long way to run before you get to that piece. And that's why Death Strat saves time on this. It's not necessarily putting the piece in an advantageous place, it's putting it in an okay place, but the really big winner here is that it's putting you closer to the piece, because you're basically teleporting from green to red. That's a lot of time save, because you don't have to be running for that time. It's pretty good. That's why green room death strats actually save more time than blue room death strats. Usually the stage end times aren't as good as blue room death strats, but they're a lot better than what they would be if death strats did not exist. So, we've discussed the applications of blue room death strats, both if you're just checking the radar and if you're checking hint, and green room death strats. And that's pretty good tactics right there. So let's discuss some of the things you don't do. One of the things I've seen people say is that you should die once and then take your piece. That's not accurate. That was a theory for just a couple days, basically. And there are some circumstances in which it could be true, but they don't exist right now. So in this case, if it's worth dying once for a piece, it's worth dying as many times as you need to get a piece that falls within the requirements. So do not just take one death and then call it good. Keep dying until you get the piece you want, or you're about to game over. If you're about to game over, probably stop, because that game over is going to cost you a bunch of time. Although if you're going by in-game time, it may not even cost you that much. So maybe game overing is just fine. But in this scenario, if you are doing death strats, do death strats. Don't do it halfway and then just stop. That's not going to end up advantageous for you. So keep doing death strats until you get the piece you need or want. Okay, let's talk about where pieces account for different strategies. So let's pop over to the other map. And we'll talk about where things actually are. So when I say blue room, what do I mean? Okay, well, blue room is anything from when you dig inside the core painting, anything in that hallway going all the way to the blue main room, and anything between red and blue, up to and including Fire Dance, right in the middle. So it does not include Angry Guy, it does not include anything closer to red room than that. If you hit Fire Dance, that's a death room, that's a death strats piece. Farther than that, like red body, that's a death strats piece. Anything in that area of blue between where you dig through the core to get into the blue hallway, and anything farther than Fire Dance, that counts as a blue room death strats piece. Fire Dance sometimes results in some really strange second pieces, which is why I recommend checking a hint for that one. When you're doing death strats, don't just look for it on the radar, because you have a relatively low chance of getting one. I believe it's about 30 or 35%, so it's not very good. What counts as a green room piece? Obviously anything in the green main room. Anything in red-green hallway that's burning mad or farther. So do not take above the small flame red and die on that. Do not take black and yellow stripes. That's the one close to red, not the one in the middle. Yeah, that's yellow and black stripes. Confusing, I know. But if it's yellow and black or burning mad or farther, that is closer to green room, that's death stratable. If it's in green core hallway, like a bat in the hourglass, that's death stratable too. Here's the fun part. Let's highlight the first pieces. The yellow ones are the first pieces. So this block of pieces in core, these core pieces also act as green room death strat pieces. So that does not include Scorpion Tattoo, that does not include Pattern Shorts. It does include Big Marshmallow, EO1, Shoebox, Embarrassing Place. Those four, if it's on the other side of core, compared to red room, it's a green room death strat piece, and it saves time to die on them even though core is that close. Do not die on Pattern Shorts or Scorpion Tattoo. Those two don't result in good death strat pieces, and they're so fast to get to that the death strats that they have do not save time. So green room death strats actually encompass a lot of pieces, and they're fast with those pieces. So that is a very basic overview of death strats. It's pretty simple at the crux of it, but I wanted to make sure that this gets out there to discuss with people, to try to allay some of the rumors that have been kicking around for a long time, and to get a clear idea of what's out there. Now, like I said at the very start of the video, the onset of a concept called uniqueness is going to make the application of death strats different. It's not going to fundamentally change it, it's going to change when it is faster to use it. But it's probably not going to be night and day, and it's not going to be for a while. At this point, for people who are just interested in learning more optimal death strat, or more optimal death chambers than just running around collecting pieces, death strats is a really good and relatively easy to remember step. So that's why I felt it was important to put this information out there, because even though it's going to be changed in a couple months, it's still going to be relevant, and right now it still represents a lot of time save. For most people, Blue Room death strats will result in about a 7-second average improvement in their death chamber times, and Green Room death strats will improve your average death chamber by roughly 12 to 13 seconds, which is a pretty big difference. So, yeah, that's a brief overview of death strats. I've glossed over some of the super specifics. Obviously, there's way too much to memorize, and frankly, no one wants to memorize like a 1,000-page spreadsheet. That's ridiculous. But yeah, I hope this was a helpful introduction into how death strats work, why they work, and how they should be applied. And yeah, go give it a try, put them in your runs, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.